so this is part 2 of my domestic violence topic video. Unfortunately, I couldn't finish the previous version because I had to pick up my daughter from kindy. So it's only a couple of days later. I've had a bit more time to think about things. So hopefully, yeah, everything comes out the way that I plan. So I finished off that other video just detailing how I got into probably the last relationship, my last relationship full stop actually, because I've been single for 4 years now. And the last domestic violent relationship I think 100% will ever be in again, because I will not be putting myself in a situation like that again. And I have grown so much, and I know, just my self-worth and everything has improved so much in the last 4 years, and I just would never allow myself to get into that situation again. Now, I was going into a little bit of detail about the ex-wife of this person and how I wanted to keep separated from her in some regards, because she did remind me a bit of myself when I was in active addiction, and I didn't want anything to do with this. But I also addressed the point where I don't believe I've got the full story of what happened back then either, and I can empathize with her in a way why she acted the way she did, and some of the things which made me think she was a psycho back then. But I can see how this person's behavior may have contributed to her acting out in this way as well. So I definitely have a different perspective on it now. But that doesn't excuse any of the behaviour that happened, and it doesn't excuse any of my behaviour too, because I will be addressing some of my behaviour in this relationship which I'm not proud of, which relates to me leaning on alcohol during this relationship, because I was clean off my drug of choice for years by this point. But I still leaned on substances to get me through stress, and it happened to be alcohol this time around. And I have never been good on alcohol. I turned into a totally different person, and it's never been something I've enjoyed either. It's the only substance, if you're out in public, the only acceptable kind of substance in a social environment. And once I got past a couple of drinks, I turned into a different person. And I'm so glad I haven't had a drink it's getting close to 4 years now, and I don't think I'll ever go back to that as well, not even socially, not even just one drink, because I don't want to be that person that loses control. I probably wouldn't behave in the same way as I did back then, because a lot of the environment and the circumstances would contribute to my negative behavior once I was intoxicated, because all the built up stuff tends to come out when you've had a few drinks, and I would definitely lose control on alcohol. So I'm definitely not hiding that fact at all. So where was I? I just wanted to address a couple of the red flags again. I did mention a couple before, like he tended to make his life not what it actually was before I was so deep in that relationship that it was, for me, I didn't want to leave at that point because I was so invested in it. But there were a couple of red flags that I should have paid attention to as well, which before my behaviour got out of control in this relationship as well. At the beginning, the first real big red flag, apart from the other ones I mentioned, sorry, I just got a notification. I have no idea what that is. Okay. So the first outing we had as a couple, I used to work at Sunglass Hut, and we had a teen night out in the city, which I was really excited about. I think it was a Christmas party or something like that. And I invited him to come along because I wanted him to. These were my friends. I worked at Sunglass Hut 3 shifts a week during my study years. And I was really excited to introduce everyone to my new partner. But that didn't go too well at all. And so once we started drinking, I was so excited. I thought we're going to have a great night. We met everybody in the city and started drinking. But he just sat there really quiet and didn't interact with anybody. And I kept saying, what's wrong? And he's like, nothing. And he just separated himself. He didn't want to interact, and he didn't attempt to try either. And then I just was so worried. I'm like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong? And we might have gone outside so I could have a cigarette or something, and he started bagging all my friends. That was something that was quite common about him he'd never have anything nice to say about my friends, and he would always put them down. But I didn't really pick that up. And I can't remember, he was quiet, and the more he drank, the more things he would say that was really disrespectful, but we ended up getting into a big fight that night, and it was based on the people I was associating with. So he tried to make me feel like I was the bad person because I had friends like this. And it was really, I don't know. And I can't even remember how that night ended, but it was pretty bad. The next day, he got me some flowers, to apologize and say he's sorry. And that kind of worked straight away for me. I'm like, because I knew myself that how sometimes when I'm drinking, I can behave out of line and things like that. So I just forgave really easily, and I just dismissed it. And I'm like, oh, he's apologized, I'm going to take that at face value. But every time that I had anything to do with friends, or an outing with friends, or if friends would come over, which wasn't very often, to be honest. I probably had a couple of close friends from high school that I would see every now and again. And just when Sunglass Hut had a staff thing on, that's probably the only times I would associate with any friends. And it would happen once every couple of months. It wasn't often at all. But every time he was involved in any of those interactions, he'd never have anything good to say about any of them. He'd make me feel bad that I was associated with people like this. But I never, anyway. And my family as well. He'd never have anything good to say about my family. Is always, oh, no. Just always a comment or here or there. And just never anything good to say. And it took me years to realize that was something he would do and I'd never do that. Like it just was a light bulb one day. I just looked back and I was like, hang on, anytime he's with his friends, I'm like always positive. And like he had nothing good to say about his friends either. Whenever he interacted with his, I can't believe I still hang out with this person, or he's just always very negative about the people he associated with. He didn't badmouth his family at all, but he badmouthed my family. And but I never, and it took one day I was just like, actually, I don't ever do that to him. I don't ever say anything negative about his family. I don't say anything negative about his friends. I don't, so it took me years to get to that point, to realize. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I just had my blinders on, who I was just got chipped away in that relationship as well, because he was very good at playing the victim to outside people. He always made himself quite small, like he wouldn't hurt anyone. And whenever these things happened, because he had a lot of violent interactions with his ex-wife during handover with the kids, and he'd always tell me, she instigated it, she hit me first, all this kind of stuff. But he'd come back and he was like the victim. And I believed that for so long. And I'll never know what actually happened because I wasn't there. But I just thought his ex was a complete psycho. And he does jiu-jitsu, and he would use that to restrain her and things like that. But I know for a fact, because he's done it with me, that he would overuse it, like to the extent where it actually hurts. So whether he did that just to defend himself, and I know because I had to call the police a lot and report these incidences, and she would tell them how he used jiu-jitsu against her, but he would always have the defense, it was just to restrain her. It was the safest way to restrain her without attacking or hurting her. But I can personally vouch that, he did overuse those tactics. So there's some more red flags. So I just, he would always make himself out to be the victim stuff, and he started to do that with me as well. So while he was going through this situation with his ex-wife, I was all out supporting him, because I thought he was in a really abusive relationship similar to the ones I had been in the past. And so I was advocating for him. I'm just like, no, this is so wrong. And to me, he was like a victim as well. And I'd be like, why don't you stand up for yourself? All this kind of stuff. So when the family court stuff happened, and then things were escalating with her and the kids, and I felt like the kids were being used a lot, more so for her, because she'd withhold them and then she would give them over and then not pick them up and do very strange things like that, just be very up and down. And there was no consistency and stuff like that. And I think, I just think the drugs had a lot to do with that as well. And she was very hurt that he went to the family court process. She felt very victimized in that And maybe there were lies involved. I don't know. I can't speak on her behalf. But anyway, she didn't take it very well. She refused to take the court papers when they were supposed to be handed to her, all that kind of stuff. It was just crazy. But yeah. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so while we were getting help, our relationship was really suffering as well because of all these violent interactions, just everything that was going on with the kids. Yeah, and I was looking into, I was like, and this is when I just started my PhD as well. So a lot of time was taken off me studying to support him in these areas. I'd go to family court with him. We'd be there all day. We'd meet with his barrister, his lawyers, and I'd be sitting with him for hours and just taking time off from my life to support him through this. So I invest a lot into him at this point. And so I was researching how do we deal with somebody like this who doesn't have boundaries, like his ex-wife. Like, how do we resolve this, and what's my part in this? So I did a lot of research and a lot of psychology text and things like that. And the best thing that are all recommended, we ended up seeing a professional psychologist, and she brought along a psychologist who deals with things like this, because I'd already been seeing this psychologist, but she brought in an outsider that could give us some advice in this relationship process, because we just weren't handling it very well. And I was drinking more, and my behavior was getting out of control, and I was drinking because it was just so stressful. And so this psychologist actually recommended to put these boundaries up with her. If she uses the kids against her, let her just keep boundaries. And if you're not going to stick to what the orders say, which she never did, then you'd have to withdraw. And then when you get the kids, take them out, have a good time with them. But just you need to keep these boundaries. So but he never did. He was like, she'd threaten him with stuff to do with the business, with money, all that kind of stuff. So when that kind of stuff happened, I think I don't know. But he never did. He never put the boundaries up with her. And if she acted psycho, if she came around unannounced, all that kind of stuff, he'd never do anything to stop that. And it was really destructive. But while we were in these professional interactions and looking at literature together, working out how to best handle this situation, and he would agree with me. He would say, yep, this is what I'm going to do, this is blah blah blah, but then he wouldn't follow through on those things. And then when I would bring it up and say, I thought we agreed we're going to handle it this way, he would turn it around and make it my fault, and I was the bad person and the professionals were wrong. And it was really gaslighting. So it started off like that, and until it just got really out of hand. Great, I just had to stop there for a second. It's still quite fresh. I find it really difficult to talk about this. It was, because I became a person I never had been before while I was with him. Like in my other relationships, I was quite petrified of the people I was in. So when the abuse happened or whatever, I'd do anything to de-escalate it, especially when I thought I was in a lot of trouble. So I'd just be very submissive and trying to look out for my just survival instincts. But with him, I wasn't scared of him physically. And as that relationship just kept chipping away at everything, the more he made me feel like I was the problem, the more he made me feel like a terrible person because of just the things that we agreed on. And I would turn to alcohol and I'd act out, and we'd get quite physical between us and either party instigating it as well. I can put my hand up and say that I definitely instigated some of the instances where we were physically violent with each other after I was intoxicated. And I'd get drunk to the point where I couldn't even remember anything, and I'd just wake up and I'd just be like, what the hell happened? There's like broken stuff everywhere. We were quite physical with each other because I guess I wasn't scared of him. And so if things escalated, I didn't really hold back either. So I'm quite ashamed to say of my behavior back then, I think, which is one of the biggest reasons that I'll never drink again. But I think this whole coercive, which I haven't really gone into all of it yet, but that's how it started. It was just, it's so hard to talk about it because it's not in your face, but it just chips away at you slowly and slowly. And there's not even one, like when you can't even think of these instances where it was so apparent, but it's about looking back on it and just saying the way he acted in front of people. But then when things would explode between us, he had a way of just making him out to be the victim, and he had nothing to do with it. He was always the innocent one, and he was the one with these psycho girlfriends or ex-girlfriends, and it was never his fault. And it really, and because I'm not a liar, I am who I am, and I don't hide it. If things are going around I'm going to tell people what's been going on, and I didn't hide that. But he was, and who knows what he said about me when I wasn't there. But I know just in the instances he was in front of my family, I saw it. I just saw, wow, you act like a totally different person in front of other people compared to what you are with me behind closed doors, and have a way of making me out to be the person in the wrong. But people picked it up, and I actually saw another psychologist, different from the family one, when I was getting my autism diagnosis and ADHD, because I was like, yeah, that was one of the interventions they suggested. It was to see a psychologist that was an expert in autism. So I started to see one, and I was halfway through this relationship with him when I started to, I think, 2 years in or something. And I'd tell her everything that was going on and everything, and she was pretty quick to pick up that she goes, you're experiencing domestic violence here. And I'm like, I'd always go back to my behavior. Oh yeah, but I do this and I do that and I do this. But every time I saw her, she goes, no, this is not right, Tammy. The way he's treating you is not right. But I just couldn't see it. I still thought that I had a big part to do with it because I was behaving in ways that weren't right and weren't who I was as a person. But she picked it up straight away, but I just never believed it. I never really took it on board. I'd question him like, oh yeah, I guess so. But then I'd go back to him, and he was just so good at being this different person. I think he was very clever, and he could tell he could read emotions. He could read my behavior, and in a kind of manipulative or way so he could mirror, or he could change his behavior based on what I was thinking or feeling, to have the best outcome for him, which I just totally missed. So yeah. Sorry, I had to stop that again. It's just, I get so lost thinking about it, and I am so ashamed of myself for just letting this happen to me, being so desperate to get into a relationship that wasn't healthy for me, just because I wanted a family and just because I thought I was running out of time. I'm so grateful I had my daughter from it all, but it took 5 or 6 years out of my life that I'll never get back. And the confidence I lost in those years after building myself up, after leaving rehab the second time and all those other abusive relationships, and years being single, like trying to build myself up again, 4 years being single actually, I allowed him into my life for the wrong reasons. I obviously wasn't ready, and I definitely wasn't ready for a relationship that came with so much, everyone calls it baggage, but I don't know what to say. It was just unhealthy. It was awful, and it did bring up a lot of things from my childhood, just watching what those boys had to go through, and the whole the violence, the family violence that they had to they were witness to. And obviously, I think from my previous videos, DCP actually got involved, and that's when we ended up having the boys full time. But she wasn't obeying those rules at all. She would come over to our house and try and kick the door in. I remember one time I was breastfeeding Harper. She was only a few months old, and she was coming to, she smashed the doorbell. Was trying to smash the door in, things like that. I'm only bringing up a couple of things. I don't want to get into detail everything she did, but there was so much of it. And when I had Harper, I had enough. I'm like, I don't want this for her. But then, like, all the stress and the whole DCP, if you go back to my first testimony video, you'll see how I went into psychosis, postpartum psychosis, or whatever you want to call it. But I had a mental breakdown at this point, and I don't know. she was around a lot when this happened. She came over a lot just before I started to lose my mind, basically. And the way my ex handled it while I was starting to really spiral was really not good. I look back on it now and I feel, I don't know, I think he was quite enjoying it. I don't think just some of the things, the facial expressions, the way he handled me not being well and me having to go to a mental institution. And by the way, when she was with him, she ended up in a mental institution. So I don't know what you make of that. But yeah, I think that says more about him than what it says about us. So make of that what you will. Anyway, I'll probably just finish off by saying how I actually ended up getting out of that relationship, because I got out of the community mental health centre. I was cleared to get out, although I still wasn't that well, to be honest, in that relationship. But what broke the camel's back, I guess you could say, was I became a Christian. I quit alcohol. God was accelerating my recovery from that, like, straight away. I think I got out of the community mental health centre in November, and by February I was going to church. When did I leave his house? It was February, I think. Yeah, by January I was going to church regularly, and God was doing a work in me. He told me to quit alcohol. I quit straight away. I'd quit smoking straight away too, although I have had a few relapses of that since then. But yeah, so, and then I was starting my PhD again, but he was still drinking, and he was still allowing her to come over, even though DCP had orders that she didn't. And that was really upsetting me, because I had Harper. She was just a little baby. I didn't want her around their physical, crazy interactions. I just did not want a part of it. And so I started, even though I was quite submissive for a while I was getting better from that mental breakdown, I was quite submissive, and he made me feel like it was all my fault. He made me feel like the whole situation between him and his ex-wife and the kids, it was all my fault. And I started to believe that. I felt so bad. I was like, and I was just apologizing every day when I got out of that place. And I just thought it was my fault that I was sick. It was my fault that I was hearing the things I was hearing. And I was doing everything to make up for it. I just felt anything to do with the boys, let me pick him up from school, let me do anything. And I still wasn't that well, and I had a 10-month-old by that stage, just trying to recover and trying to process all that stuff that happened. But I just felt like the biggest asshole, really. And I could tell, I look back at it now, and he was loving it. He was loving the way I was behaving. I was so submissive and so, anything you say. Yeah, it was insane until one day I woke up and I was like, no, this is not right. This is not right. He's allowing her to come over, like, I don't know. Yeah. And it was going against the court orders. I was getting upset because my little baby was exposed to all this stuff. And I was just like, no, I've had enough. And so when I started to fight back, he started to become aggressive, and he was still drinking. Yeah, and he didn't like the fact that I was getting stronger again. And I was finding myself and who I was. So I started to stand up to him. And one night in particular, sorry, got people around the car. Yeah, the night that I left, it was to do with her again. We had an argument. I said, I don't want to put up with this anymore. It's not right. You're not following the orders. You're not putting boundaries up. We're exactly where we have been all this time. I don't want Harper to be in this environment anymore. I don't want her. I don't want her growing up around this. But anyway, the fight he started getting violent. And I haven't gone into this kind of stuff he did. Once I wasn't drinking, because obviously when I was pregnant with Harper, I stopped drinking completely. I didn't really even go back to drinking that much. I never got drunk. I just have a wine, but then that really died off. And I just became a different person while I was with Harper. So I'd never go back to the kind of behaviour that I was doing before I was pregnant. I just did not go back to that. I could say some nasty things when we got into a fight. Like I'll admit I had a terrible mouth when emotions got high, and I regret that. And I'm working, I've worked on that. But not physical violence anymore. And the way he reacted to that was he would threaten to get physical with me. Like when I was breastfeeding Harper one time, he lunged at me like he was going to hit me, but he didn't. And he'd go and break my furniture and things like that, broke things that meant something to me or that I'd spent time making, because I refurbished a lot of the things that I owned. So that was his way of acting out. If I didn't retaliate physically like I used to, he would pretend that he was going to do something to me to probably get a reaction. I don't know, but the fact that he was doing it while I was holding a baby and while Harper was around, that was real. It was starting to hit home. I'm like, this is not a relationship I want to be in anymore. So the night that I left, he started acting that way again. He was trying to get a reaction out of me, like a physical reaction, so he could then use his physical violence against me. Because then he could always say, well, I just had a light bulb. He could always say that he was the victim. I started it. But because I wasn't drinking, I wouldn't get to that point. And then he was starting to get like that, and I actually got a little bit fearful. The fear came up in me again. So I went to Harper's room. I'm like, he's not going to do anything to me. If I'm in Harper's room, he would just leave me alone, because there wasn't that many rooms in the house. It was our bedroom, Harper's bedroom, and the boys' bedroom was all taken. So I thought, I'm just going to go escape and just be with Harper. But he started to try and get in the room while she was sleeping in her cot. And I was holding the door shut, and I'm like, no, just leave us alone, leave us alone. And he wouldn't. He kept trying to get in. I'm like, what's going to happen when he gets in? So I had my phone with me, thank God. And I rang my mum. I just said, it was like 11 o'clock at night, I think. I said, can you just come and get us? He's doing this. Can you come? And they were there, regardless of what's going on with my parents and me at the moment. They did come to get me, and I'm thankful for that. And I never went back. I was like, nah, my daughter is not going to grow up in family violence. She's not going to see this stuff. And I just thought, if he's willing to do that in front of a baby, then I'm out of here. And that was it. I've never gone back. So it's been hard as hell ever since then. Me and my daughter have moved so many times. We've been literally homeless at times since then, which, yeah, I really think needs to be addressed in, oh God. I honestly think we've moved about 5 or 6 times since we left that house. And I don't regret leaving, obviously, because I know God's helped me every step of the way. But, I'm so thankful for being able to get out of the state. We're in Queensland, and things are starting to pan out. I've been working really hard on getting my career on track so I can financially support us without ever having to be in a relationship like that again. Yeah. So it's been 4 years since that has happened. It will be 4 years in February 2027. So we're approaching 4 years. But yeah, I haven't looked back. I have at times when it's really hard. I'm like, why did I leave? But I know when I'm in the right frame of mind, I know it was the right thing to do. Yeah. So I don't know. I know the government needs to do more. I've never been one to reach out to support systems, to be honest, because every time I have in the past, it has never gone well. I've always been shunned for being on substances. Every time I went to get help from a doctor or a psychologist because I was in active addiction, they always told me, we can't help you while you're taking drugs. So I always was pushed away, always made to feel less than, especially when I went to a GP or something like that. I'm sure they're getting better as years have gone by since then. We're talking about 20 years now that's gone by since I was trying to seek help. But yeah, so I guess over the years I just started to not reach out to support systems because they were never very helpful to me. So I think the whole, how domestic violence is more public now, I think the support systems would have gotten better. I can't speak from personal experiences, but I definitely want to contribute to the research that can help people in the situations I've been in. The one piece of advice is just tell somebody. I think you need people to know what you're going through, even if you're not ready to leave, because it takes a lot to leave. Especially when you've got kids and you don't have an income. Like, I was still studying at that point. I didn't have an income. So I was, just on Centrelink payments, and it's not that much. And it's scary. It's like, you've got to support not just yourself, you've got to support another human being, which is a lot to consider when you're leaving these relationships. Yeah. Just tell people, reach out to the support systems. I will put some links below to the ones that I know about, and obviously helplines and stuff, because obviously people that are in this situation or people that have experienced it before, this might bring up some things for you that you might need to talk to somebody about. I definitely think psychologists or support groups, people that have gone through similar things, where you can talk about this stuff, and it helps you release, it helps to start the healing process, which needs to be done. Don't keep it in. You need to talk about it. You need to process it. You need to know that it wasn't all your fault, or it's not your fault at all in many cases, but I do feel bad for the way I behaved, for the way I let myself get that stressed out and turn to alcohol, and the way I reacted while I was on the alcohol. I still feel guilty and feel bad about that. But yeah, anyway, yeah. I just wanted to add that the people that I've mentioned in this video, I have forgiven them and I hold no animosity towards them. But this is my story and I have a right to tell it. I haven't mentioned any names, although obviously people that know me will know the people I'm talking about, and I apologize for that, but this sharing my story with others could possibly help other people in similar situations to recognize the signs and the warnings, recognize changes in their own behavior and mental health, which will hopefully encourage people to go get some help before things escalate too much. Yeah, I just wanted to share that before I sign off. So thanks.